Joe Goldberg is not a psychopath. He's not a charming genius. He's not a tragic anti-hero either. Joe is a trauma survivor who chose violence. A man who used his abandonment wounds not as a reason to heal, but as a justification to control, stalk, and destroy. You isn't about obsession. It's about how unhealed trauma, left unchecked, can become dangerous, not only to the person carrying it, but to everyone they claim to love. And how the choice to hurt others always belongs to the person holding the knife. Joe's behaviors follow a clear emotional cycle: idealization, overinvestment, confirmation bias, emotional collapse, devaluation, and control. This is how he loves, and this is why he kills. His childhood taught him that love can only exist in extremes. His parent made him kill to protect someone, which encoded a pattern. To love is to eliminate threats. It's not logical, it's trauma logic. But instead of facing that fear, Joe clings to the fantasy of perfect love to soothe it. When that fantasy is challenged, even by something as small as a partner asserting independence, he spirals into a need to regain control, often violently. He doesn't kill because he enjoys it, he kills because he panics, and killing becomes his self-soothing mechanism. That's why he says that he enjoys it. But let's be clear, trauma is not an excuse for becoming a bad person. It explains it, but it doesn't justify it. Let's talk about the women that Joe loves or thinks he loves. Beck is the perfect example of Joe's idealization spiral. She is emotionally layered, flawed, and deeply human. A woman who self-sabotages in ways that Joe cannot emotionally tolerate. He doesn't just fall in love with her, he turns her into a story, a solution to his inner loneliness. There is real love there, but it's overshadowed by the fact that Joe doesn't know how to love without ownership. He doesn't just fall in love with her, he turns her into a story, a solution to his inner loneliness. There is real love there, but it's overshadowed by the fact that Joe doesn't know how to love without ownership. He doesn't devalue Beck, he devalues her love the moment it stops being perfect. And that's when the fantasy shatters. Love Quinn is a mirror, just as obsessive, just as wounded. But the difference? She's unpredictable, and unpredictability undermines Joe's control and triggers his fear of abandonment. He respects her madness, even fears it, but ultimately rejects her because she reflects the part of himself he can't manage. The part that is feral, unfiltered, and chaotic. Ironically, this was the relationship with the most potential had they both gotten clinical help. But instead, Joe kills the version of himself that he can't accept, projected onto her. Marianne is his redemption arc. She's emotionally self-aware, a loving mother, a recovered addict, everything Joe wishes he could be. She represents emotional regulation and growth, something he never developed or attained. He sees her love for her child and uses it as a blueprint for the version of himself he wants to become. But the illusion crumbles. Joe doesn't let her go out of growth. He lets her go in his fantasy. In reality, he's still not capable of respecting boundaries that threaten his narrative. And then there's Kate. Kate is not the clean slate that she first appears to be. Yet she's the most emotionally composed woman that Joe meets, and she chooses him with conviction. That soothes his abandonment trauma. It makes him feel wanted, chosen, and valuable. But this is not love, it's usefulness. Kate sees Joe as someone that she can shape, protect, control, And initially Joe likes it because it allows him to feel worthy. For a while, obedience becomes proof of love. And for someone like Joe, that almost becomes enough. But Kate isn't innocent because she uses him too. He becomes a tool in her world, and she becomes a performance in his world. She helps him clean his slate, restore his identity, get Henry back, but only in her terms. Joe buys into the fantasy that maybe they saved each other, but it never lasts because soon the dynamic shifts. Kate begins to change the narrative. She distances herself emotionally, recasts herself as the rational one after using him to kill her uncle, and once again, Joe is left feeling like the villain in someone else's story. And that's when Bronte appears, right when he's most vulnerable, and the fantasy resets. Bronte doesn't reawaken Joe's darkness, Kate does. By almost ordering that Joe kills her uncle, Kate indirectly gives Joe permission to believe that love and violence can coexist, which was his initial thought as a child too. Bronte, on the other hand, reawakens both the good and the dark side of him. She isn't a repeat of Beck, but she represents the same thing, the hope that someone will love him for who he really is. And at first, Joe is trying, if only quietly, to change and quiet his impulse to fall into these fantasies in his head, and he tries to manage them. But after Kate covertly pushes him to kill her uncle and decides that she doesn't want to do any of those things anymore, she begins to emotionally distance herself from him and push him back towards that familiar cycle, the obsession, projection, and unraveling. And Bronte appears right as this cycle begins to crack open. Not because she enables his darkness, but because her presence offers something that Kate no longer can, the feeling of being chosen without being used. And so Joe sees Bronte as another clean slate, a fourth clean slate, really, and another chance, his final opportunity to be loved without manipulation and without lies. And for a moment, he is genuine. He doesn't hide. He lets himself care. But then the truth comes out. Bronte isn't Bronte. She's Louise. She lied. It was all a cover. And so Joe spirals. Had Kate not decided that she was going to be the victim in the story, and had Kate let Joe explain himself, his emotional process, his triggers, his shame, things might have turned out differently. But timing is everything, and timing failed both of them. And Kate, despite her own darkness, she plays the role of the rational one. And so she chooses to distance herself and pushes Joe into a deeper spiral, not only distancing herself, but taking away Joe's child. And once again, love slips out of his control. But this time, it's not only his love for a woman, it's his deep and almost pure love for his child. The core truth is that Joe demonstrates love the only way that he learned it growing up, by removing perceived threats. And this doesn't make him a person incapable of love, it's just that he doesn't trust love unless he manages it. And this is what makes Joe terrifying, not his violence, but his emotional logic. The fact that he understands people deeply, can connect with them emotionally, and still chooses harm. This isn't the story of a misunderstood anti-hero or of a bewildered psychopath. This is a cautionary tale about what happens when you romanticize trauma and mistaken obsession for devotion. So Joe Goldberg is a sociopath driven by fear, not madness. He is a deeply wounded man who was capable of love, growth, and accountability, but he chooses fantasy, control, and denial instead. Because ultimately, being traumatized doesn't make you a villain. Choosing to blame the world for your wounds and hurting others because of them is what does. We love to watch shows like You and distance ourselves, but the truth is, we all carry stories that we have romanticized. And maybe part of Joe's danger is that he shows us what happens when we stop trying to rewrite them and start weaponizing them instead. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!